Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Killer B Dog on Witch Friday General. You got a witch, I'm burning them up. Um, I got a. Hopefully, it's a good topic for you guys. Hope a lot of people tune in and listen to what I found here. It's something that I haven't read everything. I skimmed through it. It seemed like a pretty cool subject, so I'm gonna let loose on it tonight. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments or chat boards. I might not read everything there, but I will share the link. Something within this video, it will be in the chat. So this is going to be talking about the first people of the South Carolina Low Country, like where I live up here in the Northeast. A lot of the black people, African American people that live here, a lot of them have a lot of roots in South Carolina, especially South Carolina Low Country. Low Country is basically on the southern, no, east southern border of South Carolina. The coastal areas of South Carolina considered like the Low Country. Um, the culture in the Low Country in the rest of South Carolina sort of differs, like a lot in certain ways and stuff. And as far as like food and how it's prepared, a lot of certain different things. For one that sticks out the most to me is like barbecue. People talk about barbecue in the South and stuff like that. The lowlands have a certain technique of barbecue, or use certain ingredients in barbecue that is in common with the rest of the state. I just want to read some stuff here. Sorry, I'm up here. One second. Oh, hit me now. All right. What up, Samiel? What's up? What's going on, man? So I'm gonna start this thing off. Yeah, we get right into it. Shout out to all my supporters out there. If you'd like to become a supporter, hit my Cash App or Super Chat, whatever thing. Make a donation, and I will make a video for you. The newest supporters, I'm working on those videos. They'll probably come out tomorrow morning. The thank you videos. Yeah, so you make a donation, I'll make a thank you video for you. You'll get placed at the bottom of the screen as you see all the names there at the bottom. Also, like I said, just hit the Cash App, preferably Cash App. If you just want to just super like, super chat, whatever, that's fine. And it's appreciated. And so let's just get up in this. I decided change things up again from the normal content that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks or whatever. Let's get into something a little bit more educational. It interests me more than doing the other stuff. I know a lot of you people like the drama and all that stuff, but hey, let's learn something. All right, so this is by Nick Butler, PhD. From the Charleston. This article is coming out of Charleston Public Library. The article is written Friday, November 19th, 1921 by Nick Butler, PhD. The Low Country in South Carolina once belonged to more than a dozen distinct groups of Native Americans whose existence is now barely remembered. In the decades after the founding of, oops, it's not here right. Okay, I'm sorry. In the decades after the founding of Charleston in 1670, the indigenous people of this area interacted regularly with the white settlers from Europe, and enslaved Africans transported from the Caribbean. Disease, warfare, displacement gradually reduced their numbers. However, The first people of the Low Country were virtually extinct by the middle of the 18th century. Their history is now largely forgotten, but the names are fixed in our vocabulary. You hear that? My goal is this program is to provide a brief overview of the very complex topic that is embedded within the sprawling backdrop of the European exploration and settlement in North America. The material presented here is merely a primer intended to stimulate and stimulate further study. In recent decades, a number of scholars have published dozens of books focused on the early history of Native Americans who once populated the southeastern region of the present United States. Because most of that material focused on the 18th and 19th century, however, the first people of South Carolina Low Country are largely excluded. The bulk of this story is embedded in early generations. At present, the best resource for exploring history in Charleston First People is a book published in 1980 by Glenn Waddell, titled "Indians of the South Carolina Low Country, 1562 to 1751." I might do a show on that too. You can find a copy of this limited edition book in South Carolina History Room at the Charleston Public Library and the academic libraries across the state, or access a digitized version through the website of College of Charleston. Mr. Waddell's book is a trove of valuable information. Okay. The geographic range of this conversation embraces what is commonly called the Low Country of South Carolina. That is, the coastal plain stretching approximately 80 miles inland between the Savannah River and the south, the Savannah River to the south, and the Santee River to the north. Conveniently, this geographic range encompasses a landscape that is relatively homogeneous history during the period of European exploration and colonization in centuries past. Both of the Savannah and Santee Rivers appear to have formed cultural, political boundaries between the indigenous people that once inhabited this area and their neighbors to the south and the north. The native people of the Low Country were also culturally and politically distinct from the inland tribes like the Catawba, Cherokee Creek, Muskegon, Shawnee, and the Chickasaw. Representatives of those larger westerly groups certainly form part of the early history of South Carolina, but the seed of their respective histories lie beyond the Low Country and beyond the scope of present conservation. Many sources published in the past century describes the various tribes or bands of indigenous people of the Low Country as members of a larger collective called the Kasabo, but the modern use of that term is fraught with problems. The collective term Kusalo is an artificial construct inspired by the 19th and 20th century scholarly obsession with the classification. In reality, people commonly called Indians who inhabited the Low Country of the 17th and 18th centuries never identified themselves as constituent parts of the broad collective. The collective noun is a convenient handle for conversations about the past, but it's a modern invention based on a very thin veneer of historical evidence. When colonists of the early 18th century spoke or wrote about the Native Americans who lived among the coastal settlements of South Carolina, they frequently used some variations of a rather generic two-word phrase, settlement Indians. The word tribe implies a unified community with a relatively stable identity over time, but this term might not be appropriate for conversations about some of the indigenous people whose lives were fractured by the interaction with European settlers in the area during the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. French, Spanish, and English writers of the era frequently used the term nation to describe various native groups, but the surviving records do not explain how those people described or defined their own collective identity. Although tribe might not be the most historically appropriate term, its widespread familiarity renders it useful for present discussion. That says a lot right there. From a number of documentary records dated by the French, Spanish, and English settlers between the 1562 and 1751, we find the names of more than 24 groups of tribes, groups or tribes, for indigenous people residing within the Low Country of South Carolina. By comparing descriptions of these people and noticing similarities of names and locations over time, we can surmise that these dozens of names represented at least 19 distinct identities. Not all these groups existed at the same time, however. It's possible that some of the groups described by 16th century visitors form part of the differently named groups encountered by 17th century settlers. For example, the earliest surviving descriptions of indigenous people along the southern coast of modern South Carolina, recorded by French and Spanish explorers between 1562 and 1576, contains references to at least 7 distinct communities or tribes. Escamacu, the largest and southernmost tribe; the Hoya, a much smaller tribe near the Escamacu, I believe I'm pronouncing that right. The Isdisto on the Broad River, the Tupa Broad River, and the Mayan, the Salim, and the Coosa. The creation of the semi-permanent Spanish settlement in Santa Elena, which is modern-day Parris Island, in 1566 greatly disrupted the lives of the indigenous people living in that area. The largest tribes of the region, the Escamacu, later called the St. Helena people, rebelled against the Spanish in 1576 and triggered several years of warfare. Spanish forces retaliated against the Escamacu and their neighbors and enlisted other indigenous tribes from the south of the Savannah River to raid and enslave rebellious people around the Santa Ana. As a result of this bloody conflict, sometimes called the Escamacu War, most or all the indigenous people who resided along the southern coastlines of modern South Carolina moved either northward or westward. The introduction of European diseases in the 1560s, combined with several years of warfare during the late 1570s, also reduced the native population of the region significantly. During the final decades of the 16th century, it is possible, perhaps even likely, that the survivors of some formerly distinct groups banded together to form new identities or amalgamated with other tribes, so they moved away from the orbit of Spanish influence. Santa Elena served as the capital of La Florida from 1566 to 1587, at which time Spanish forces largely abandoned the site and retreated southward to San Augustine. Over the next 20-odd years, Spanish agents sailing northward from the new capital continued to explore the coastline of modern South Carolina and encountered additional groups of indigenous people. In the vicinity of the harbor, they called St. George, modern-day Charleston Harbor, Spaniards met with representatives of 3 distinct communities that we recognize as the Stono, the Kiowa, the Etuan people, who were associated with the Stono, Ashley, and Cooper rivers, respectively. Excuse me. These three tribes were still present in the 1670s when English colonists began settling around Charleston Harbor. As these settlers pushed southward from Charleston towards the former Spanish settlement of Santa Elena, they encountered three tribes that were apparently synonymous with those described in the 16th century: the Edistu, Coosaw, and the St. Helens. The three new groups were called the Wimby, the Ashepu, and the Combahee. To the west and north of Charleston, English colonists of the early 1670s encountered four additional tribes known as the Wando, Sampa, Huso, and the Siwi. Another group known as the Wichagu are known only through the single document recorded in 1684, while the Bohicket people first appeared on a map created around 1685. Hold on one second, guys. All right, sorry, I had to take a sip. My bad, y'all. I kicked myself out by accident. All right, let's get back to this. Let's skip over a little bit. So you guys still have something to read when I share this. An early visitor to South Carolina returned to London and published in 1682 a physical description of the indigenous people he had encountered around Charleston. Now, listen closely. The natives of the country are from time immemorial Aborigine Indians of a deep chestnut color, a hair black and straight, tied various ways, sometimes oiled and painted, struck through with feathers or ornaments or gallantry, their eyes black and sparkling, little or no hair on their chins, well limbed and featured, painting their faces with different figures of a red and sanguine color, whether for beauty or to render themselves formidable to their enemies. I could not learn. They are excellent hunters. The weapons and bow and arrows made of reed, pointed with sharp stones or fish bones. Their clothing skins of the bear or deer, the skin dressed after their country fashion. Although the various indigenous people of the coastal South Carolinas might have shared a number of general physical characteristics, we know almost nothing about their language. The low country landscape of the 21st century includes more than 100 place names of indigenous origin, but no other texts or documents survive to provide further information about the grammar and vocabularies that they used. Clues embedded in their respective tribal names and place names suggest the presence of at least two distinct languages within the Low Country. One was probably related to Sai-Ulan family of languages, and the other perhaps related to the Mushogian Hogian family of languages. There were perhaps several languages and dialects to use. What's up? Kitty Dillers, whatever. Yeah, you pronounce that. Welcome. Um, there were perhaps several languages and dialects across the Low Country of the late 17th century, but there are no records to enable scholars to reach a more distinctive conclusion. Most of the known tribal groups in this area were able to communicate with each other to some degree. However, it is likely that the indigenous population of the Low Country, like their neighbors or other regions, were multilingual people. Members of these 15 groups, the Ashapu, Bohicket, Kombai, the Esdisto, Etiwan, Kiowa, Kosu, St. Helens, Sampa, Siwi, Stono, Wando, Wimby, and Witchiku were largely friendly to the European settlers of the late 17th century and the enslaved people of the African descent transported from the English settlements in the Caribbean. Their collective willingness to tolerate this foreign influx was motivated to a large degree by their desire to gain protection from hostile Indians in the South and West who were allied with the Spanish government in St. Augustine. On several occasions in 1670 and 1680s, local Indians banded with Carolina colonists, colonists, to drive away the hostile Weto people who came from south of the Savannah River to kill and enslave the indigenous people allied with the English. The Westo were not the only group to cause problems for the early colonists. However, the Kosu people centered around the upper reaches of the Ashley River began to push back against the English encroachment in 1671, followed by the Stono in 1674. For this, the colonial government punished the rebellious natives with violence. Excuse me. Those who resisted were sold into slavery and shipped to English settlements in the Caribbean, while the survivors were increasingly displaced. Such classes combined the exposure to European diseases and vices caused by native populations to decline rapidly. The author of another pamphlet published in 1682 informed English readers that none of the Low Country tribes had more than 50 bowmen, and one, the Stono, had only 1,600. The stability of the indigenous population was further eroded during the early years of English colonization by the expanded footprint of plantations and cattle herds. The rebellious Kuso people, for example, were forced to surrender their traditional homelands in 1675 and move further to the north and west. I hope you guys just hearing me. Let's get up a little bit. Shit, I gotta go. Between the winter of 1697 and the spring of 1700s, hundreds of white colonists, African slaves, and Native Americans perished in a series of mortal fevers which swept through the Charleston area. Meanwhile, most of the Sioux people were lost at sea when they attempted to row a fleet of canoes to England, another round of fatal sickness in the summer of 1706. Further weakened the local population and induced the squadron of Spanish and French ships to attempt the invasion of Charleston. Native American allies west of the Ashley and east of the Cooper provided valuable assistance to the English on their occasion, but their numbers continued to shrink. An Anglican minister reported in London in 1706 that each of these surviving tribes of Low Country Indians included no more than 50 people. Well, you have to read. I'm about to read it. I'm going to share this with you guys. It's very interesting. Oh shit! I'm going to share this thing here. Damn. Let's see something here. Oh! I know how to do it. All right. Hope you. Okay, shit. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna share this link here for you. Copy. Oh, man. Okay. Oh, someone on. Yeah. Come on, well, goddamn. Damn it. All right. Jeez. All right. Shit like this. Jeez. All right. There you go, the link. And it's going to be in the chat here. Shit like this. Jeez. All right. There you go. There you go. That's the link to it. You guys can do further research. Any questions, comments, or anything, leave them in the description box. All right. So I'm Killer B, the Witchfinder General. It's been like half hour, so that's cool. I don't know, but I might come back on later, maybe, but doubt it. But yeah, thanks you guys, whoever tuned in, whoever watches this video, is greatly appreciated. And stuff, and keep supporting Killer B out here. I'm trying to keep it 1,000. All right. With that, y'all, I'm up out of here. Peace.